Hello and welcome to GreenBiz Studio. I'm Grant Harrison, Director for Sustainable Finance and ESG with GreenBiz Group, and I'm excited to be speaking today with Diligent CEO Brian Stafford about using data to set, measure, and exceed your ESG targets. Great to have you with us in the studio, Brian.
Thanks, Grant. It's great to be here.
Awesome. Well, let's start where it's always best to start at the beginning. With setting ESG targets, what would you want to highlight for companies tuning in here who are just getting started on their ESG reporting journey?
Yeah, for companies just getting started on the ESG reporting journey, what I'd say is companies are unbelievably thoughtful and thorough about how they set their financial targets for their business. And we would argue that it's incredibly important or equally important as an organization to make sure you're as thoughtful in setting your targets for your ESG commitments. And you can see those targets for your ESG commitments by looking at what your competitors have done, what other companies in the market have done, what other companies you aspire to actually be like, how they have set their targets as well, and be thoughtful around how you set your targets for an organization.
Great. Thanks, Brian. Let's move now to measuring, which, as we all know, is the necessary key ingredient for anything to be successfully managed, as the management adage goes. Again, for these companies just getting started on this ESG reporting journey, what comes top of mind for you? Advice, best practices, anything from your experience?
Yeah, I'd have to say with any target setting, first thing you have to do is you actually have to start and measure and get a baseline. And so get a baseline for what your carbon emission is, get a baseline for what your scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 emissions are across the business. Try to understand how you might compare ultimately to your competitors, anyone who does release other information around ESG. And that forms a great baseline so you can then go and audit and put the steps in place and set the right goals and targets as an organization so you can improve over time. And I think that improvement over time really shows your commitment as an organization to being more sustainable.
And I'm going to offer an oft-quoted statistic here that feels relevant. Something around 90% of the value of the S&P 500 is intangible assets, up from something like 12 or 15% back from 1975, I think is the rooted number there, which is not an insignificant change. And no small part of that 90% is brand value, reputation. Can you connect what we're just talking about here about setting and measuring back to that kind of whopping set of value that is through brand and reputation?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, when I think about your ESG targets that you set, first of all, baselining and then where you decide you're going to get to. I mean, ultimately, your people ask the why. Why should I set these targets? Why should it matter? And it goes back to exactly what you said, Grant. It's whether your customers, whether your employees, whether your shareholders, whether regulators, all value your sustainability and your path forward. Ultimately, many of them do. They all do. And how do you improve your brand? How do you improve your reputation? It's by making commitments to things that matter, ultimately to your customers, to your employees, to your investors, your broader set of stakeholders. And so I think this is a really important part of an organization's external reputation and view in the minds of its most important stakeholders.
Great. Thank you, Brian. Very much appreciate you joining us in the studio today. It was great to connect with you, and hope to be back in touch with you soon.
Looking forward to it.
You just heard from Diligent CEO Brian Stafford here in the GreenBiz Studio.